Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We'll be talking about Word Warm-Ups Live Basics, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's an overview of Word Warm-Ups Live, which is one of the programs within our Read Live suite. Today, what we'll walk through is why Word Warm-Ups works. We'll talk a little bit about assessment and some of the instructional decisions that need to be made when you're going to be using Word Warm-Ups Live. We'll talk about how it works. You'll actually log in as if you're a student and walk through an exercise so you can see it in action as well. And then finally, we'll mention how it can meet the various needs of our students. You probably realize that Read Live is a suite of programs that includes the 4 programs that you see on your screen: Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-Ups Live, 1 Minute Reader Live, and Read Naturally Live Espanol. Today, we're going to focus on Word Warm-Ups Live. The primary focus in Word Warm-Ups Live is phonics. There's some spelling work. It supports fluency, but through phonics development, right? Building automaticity and decoding so that they can become fluent, so they can become good comprehenders. There is some phonemic awareness in Word Warm-Ups Live as well. Now, Read Naturally Live does have a phonics series, and I'll mention when you use which one in a little bit. And the primary focus in our flagship intervention is fluency, comprehension, phonics in the phonics series with support for vocabulary and spelling. On this slide, which you have in your handout, it just lists an overview. Of course, our flagship Fluency and Comprehension program, Read Naturally Live, that goes from 1st through 8th grade reading level. That is an intervention, meaning that a teacher is required to be with the student for at least 1 or 2 of the steps. Word Warm-Ups Live is also an intervention. We have level 1, 2, and 3. They're creatively named. Level 1 is 1-syllable words, 2 is 2-syllable words, and 3 is multisyllabic words. And as I mentioned, we'll get to see an exercise, and I'll go through some of the scope and sequence and patterns that are taught in those various levels. 1 Minute Reader Live is a totally independent reading program that starts in 1st and goes through mid-5th grade level. Students work independently. Not just some of the time, but all the time. And so it can be used in independent reading time, or whenever a student needs a little more structure and guidance to independent reading. And then finally, we have an option if you're trying to teach students to read in Spanish. Read Naturally Live Espanol is an option for that. So again, today we're focusing on Word Warm-Ups Live. Just wanted you to kind of have an idea of all the programs that are available within the Read Live suite of programs. Okay, so why does it work? Well, why it works and what it does is that it works on phonics instruction so that students can become automatic with their decoding, right? We know that some students struggle to become fluent for sometimes many reasons. Sometimes it's because of poor phonemic awareness and phonics skills. Sometimes kids have to slow down because they're not automatic with decoding their words, and that causes some disfluent reading. And we also know that students who cannot decode words accurately and automatically, they're not fluent readers, and that will directly impact their comprehension and their educational career, of course. Word Warm-Ups is there to reinforce phonemic awareness and phonics. It helps students develop mastery and automaticity in their decoding. And of course, it supports fluency development, right? It's just through the phonics piece and decoding piece of reading. Let's just take a minute to talk about why it's so important to work on decoding and to be able to decode words. You might not realize this, but the truth is most words, by a large percentage, are decodable. In fact, 50% of the words in the English language are decodable completely. Every single sound is represented by a pattern letter, and it's absolutely decodable, like the words you see on the screen: black, hot, plain, right? They're all decodable words. Another 37% of the words have just one issue or one part that is not completely decodable. For example, the word temperature is almost decodable, right? You can almost get there. A student just needs to learn the vowel A in the third syllable in temperature, says the schwa sound. So it says So knowing how to decode most of that word is tremendously helpful and important. So that's 87% of our words. The only 13%, like the word ocean, are words that need to be memorized. So it's absolutely critical that our students become able and good at decoding words with automaticity. They need to have automatic word recognition skills in order for them to develop fluency. And of course, that is essential to them becoming good comprehenders. And students who have not developed automaticity in single word reading by the beginning of second grade are at risk for reading failure. And I know that there are many schools and districts out there who have more struggling readers than they've ever had. Some students didn't get a good basis on their phonics work. And so word warm-ups is a good option to fill in those holes that those students have. Word warm-ups uses the Read Naturally strategy that is used in all 4 of the programs within Read Live. So Read Naturally Live, Word Warm-ups Live, 1 Minute Reader Live, and our Spanish version use teacher modeling, repeated reading, and progress monitoring. So if they need support, they can hear the word read. They practice reading the same thing over and over to build automaticity, and they are motivated by the progress monitoring that is done right in front of their eyes. They see their progress in front of them. It's not in your book, but rather it's on their computer screen as they're working, which is quite motivating for the students. So level 1 actually starts with letter sounds. So if you look up in this, in your scope and sequence on level 1, 1-syllable words, section A is letter sounds, and then it goes into short vowels, your typical CVC words. Typically, these are words, phonics skills that are taught in first and maybe very early second grade. Level 2, of course, has 2-syllable words. And we start off in section A of level 2 starts off in compound words, then more compound words and base words not changed and so forth. We get into prefixes and suffixes, closed and open syllables as well. And finally, level 3 is our multisyllabic word level. And so that works specifically on flexed vowel sounds, prefixes, suffixes, open and closed syllables, connectors. It helps students chunk words based on their syllables and then blend them together. Very often it's not exact, right? There's a little change that has to happen oftentimes to make that word sound the way it is intended to sound. And so students who struggle with that, which is a huge percentage of our students, even a lot of middle schools and even high school students struggle with decoding those long words. And so word warm-ups level 3 is hugely helpful for a very large group of students. Decoding those big words that are unknown to them can be very challenging. And this level really helps students get an opportunity to practice that so that they can become automatic and confident when they see those words. We're going to talk briefly about assessment and instructional decisions. We do have a video as well as a webinar that goes into more detail into using the word warm-ups live phonics assessment, but I'm just going to give a little overview here. But know that if you want more detailed information, we do have videos and webinars that are available for that. So when you're thinking about your students, they sort of fall into 3 categories, right? There's students who have issues with just fluency. Usually those kids also have issues with comprehension, right? Then we have students who have issues with both fluency and phonics. That is a very large group of students. They're so closely tied. And then finally, sometimes we have students who just have a phonics need we need to address. Okay, so let's just start with that simple option because it is the simplest to talk about in the reference to Word Warm-Ups Live. So Marcy is a student, let's say, who we're only going to use Word Warm-Ups Live to work on phonics. Okay, she doesn't struggle with fluency, and so we're just going to use this program. And the first thing, of course, we need to do is identify her earliest phonics need, right? And so sometimes people in districts will have their own phonics assessment that they use. That's great if you do. You don't necessarily have to do ours as well. Phonics skills are named in a way that's really easy to line them up with a different assessment. But if you don't have one, we have one in the program. In a few minutes, I'm going to demo some things within Word Warm-Ups Live, and I'll show you where you can locate that assessment. That assessment will help you place in the appropriate section of Word Warm-Ups Live, and it even gives you guidance into that question about whether or not the student should work in the phonics series and how to know, right? We have on our website, as I mentioned, and we're going to have a link to it in the chat box in a moment. We actually have 4 videos that talk about Word Warm-Ups Live. And the first one talks about assessing phonics needs. And it deals with Word Warm-Ups Live and when you use Read Naturally Live phonics series. And so that video is on our website. It's very helpful. There's other videos on there as well. That can be helpful as far as looking at the steps that students go through in all the various exercises. But when you give a student the phonics assessment that is in Read Live, that's available for you within Word Warm-Ups Live, it is probably very similar to a phonics assessment you've done in the past, right? You're going to give a student a list of CVC words, long vowel silent E, long vowel pairs, whatever the issue you think there might be. You have the student read those words to you, and based on how they do, that will help you determine whether or not they need to work in that section. Sometimes students, you will assess a student, they get to a certain section, and they don't know any of the skills after that, right? Other times you have a student who just has random holes. Maybe they struggle with R controlled, and then they struggle with certain suffixes in level 2 and then all of level 3. So you don't have to waste a student's time on a skill they've already mastered. This assessment will help you hone in on exactly what it is they need. And as you can see, it provides guidance in the assessment. This is an actual picture of the scoring worksheet that's available. It tells you how to score it. It even gives you a script, tells you what to say to the kids when you're doing the assessment. And again, I'll show you that in a minute when I go to the demo. But as you can see right on this scoring sheet, it says if the student has 3 or more errors or a total score of 6 or more, you're going to stop testing. If not, continue testing. This student only has 1 error and a total score of 2. So she doesn't meet either of those requirements. So I'm going to go into the next section, section D, which is long vowel pairs. And now I can see that the student had 3 errors. She has a total score of 4, but she met the first requirement, which is 3 errors. And now it tells me my options, okay? So know that if you utilize this assessment, the assessment will help you know whether or not there is a Read Naturally Live phonics option for you. Okay, so with Marcy, it says, the first line says, place in Word Warm-Ups Live Level 1, Section D. She doesn't know this well enough, long vowel pairs, so she can work in Section D. If Marcy also had a fluency issue, you could try testing her in 1.5 of Read Naturally Live, because the phonics level that correlates is 1.3, and that addresses long vowel pairs. So in the scoring worksheet, you are given the information you need to make that determination. Okay. And as I mentioned before, we have a webinar on our website that goes very deeply into assessment. And so if you want more in-depth information on assessment, please go to our training tab, click on the webinars, and if you go to the recorded webinar page, you'll find that. But after going through this assessment with Marcy, she didn't have a fluency need, right? We said that Marcy only has phonics needs. So Marcy's only going to work in Word Warm-Ups Live Level 1, Section D, which is vowel pairs. Now, what if you have a student who struggles with fluency and phonics? Well, if that student can read at a mid-3rd grade level or above, you have to teach them separately, okay? Read Naturally Live Phonics series has options that go through very early 3rd grade. But once your students are in a Read Naturally Live mid-3rd and above, we don't have a phonics level in Read Naturally Live that's at that level. Doesn't mean that you don't have kids that are reading at that level that have phonics issues. I know you do, right? but you need to teach him separately. It's what word warm-ups is for. So Evan is a student who you think is reading, let's say at mid-third grade level. You know he has a fluency issue. You put him through the placement process. You were right. You could put him in the sequence series or idiom series. There is not a phonics option listed. If there was, it would be listed right here. Okay, it would tell you what skill is taught and the level, but there's not. So I'm going to place Evan in the sequence series, level 3.5. And that is where he will work on fluency and comprehension. Okay, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't struggle with a phonics issue. In this case, Evan struggles with R control. Look at this table. R control is taught at a mid-second grade level. Evan can function in Read Naturally Live at a mid-third grade level. I am not going to hold Evan back on fluency, comprehension, vocabulary development to address that specific phonics need. I am going to use word warm-ups for that. I will not use Read Naturally Live phonics series because Evan can handle material that's higher than that. So when you have students who are able to read at a mid-third grade level or above and have phonics needs, you will need to use word warm-ups live as well as Read Naturally Live. So for an example, if most second graders, early third graders end up working in the phonics series because they read at a first or second grade level, and that's where those phonics skills are taught. Once students get into fourth, fifth, sixth grade, many of them still have phonics issues, but they can function a little higher than where that phonics issue is taught. So don't hold them back. Word warm-ups is in there to help you differentiate further, right? You can meet each kid where he is in each part of reading. So in Evan's case, we're going to meet him at 3.5 and Read Naturally Live. We're going to have him work in Word Warm-Ups Live on the R controlled. So we might give him the assessment. We'll find section G because we suspect he struggles with that. And we're right. We give him the assessment, level 1, section G, which is the section on vowels and consonant R. He has 3 or more errors. So I'm going to put him in Word Warm-Ups Live, level 1, section G. Okay. Evan still has a fluency and comprehension issue, so he's still going to work and Read Naturally Live. He will work in both. Now, in your handout, you have a little takeaway. I am a checklist person. I love checklists. I need lists or I forget half of the things I need to do. And I love checking them off the list. In fact, sometimes I'll put something on a list that I've already done just so I can check it off. So here is a takeaway in your handout. That is assessment directions. And as I mentioned, we have a video on our website for assessments, and we have a webinar on assessing in Word Warm-Ups Live. So if you want more on that, please go find those resources. So let's talk about how Word Warm-Ups Live works. In doing that, we're going to talk about the different skills that are taught. So in level 1 and level 2, we have that scope and sequence on one page. So it tells you, I don't know how well you can see it on my screen, but it tells you which section or which letter sounds and which patterns are taught in each of the different sections. Level 1 has 9 sections. There are 69 exercises between those 9 sections. So 69 in total, spread out over the 9 sections. And it starts in letter sounds, then CVC, and so forth. Okay. Level 2 is 2-syllable words, and there's 8 sections with 68 exercises. And level 3 is that multisyllabic level that works on 7 different sections covering 48 different exercises. Now, when I say exercise, what do I mean? Well, there's different kinds of exercises. In fact, there's 5. So there's an introduction, there's a word list, review, story, and challenge. Okay, the challenge and the review are word list lessons. They're just a review of the word lists and a slightly more challenging word list. Okay, so there's sort of 3, but you can break up that word list lesson into a kind of different subcategories. I'm going to go through a word list lesson so that you can see it actually within the program. But as you can see, there's a toolbar at the top that tells you the different steps that the students are on, as well as what are the steps that coming up. So they look, listen, and respond. They work on their word list, they work on spelling, and then they need the teacher in order to do that final pass step. In the story exercises, they do a read along. They practice reading the story with a narrator. There's a quick quiz, and then they have to read that final story, that story for the teacher for a final time. As you can see, we have a step poster, and there are different steps for different exercises. And so the step poster does highlight that. And that is also available on our website if it's something you're interested in accessing. One other takeaway in our handout is a getting started checklist. Okay, making sure your students have access to Read Live, have a license, adding students if they're not in there, assessing the students who need it, licensing the students, giving them access, and teaching them the steps. Okay, so this is your checklist. Now I'm going to log in first as a teacher and show you how to do those getting started checklists. And then I'm going to log in as a student and show you what a word list exercise looks like. So let me go to the staff module first and log in as a teacher. When I go to the home page, here are all my tiles. Many of you might be familiar. You've already worked in Read Naturally Live, perhaps. Word Warm-Ups Live is down here near the bottom in the middle. Word Warm-Ups Live, first button, blue button in the upper left-hand corner is where you can print your phonics assessment. Here is your printable phonics assessment. Okay. You have a level screener. You have a level 1, section A worksheet and a student copy. On your scoring worksheet, there is a script for you. So if you've never done an assessment like this, there's a script for you to give you support to do that. Okay. Notice that the assessment opened in a new tab. My cursor is kind of circling over the tab that the assessment is in. I am still logged into Read Live, and I am still in the Word Warm-Ups Live tile. Okay. So if I want to find out if a student is in here, I can click on the 3 horizontal bars and enter the student's name and click apply. And I can see Carrie Carter is in this account. Okay, great. But she does not have access to Word Warm-Ups Live. So I can select the box next to her name and click Add Word Warm-Ups Live Access. This box is telling me that by adding Word Warm-Ups Live Access, I am automatically assigning her to level 1, section B, which is short vowels. That's not going to be right for all my kids, right? In fact, probably most of them, it's not going to be right. So when I click yes, we can see that now yes is in the column for Word Warm-Ups Access, and it put her in level 1, section B with a goal of 40. That's not going to be right for most of your students. So you will click on this edit button, and based on how they did on that assessment that you give them, you might put them in a different level, in a different section, and click save and close. Okay. Now the goal is typically 40 is right, but you do want to take a look at how they do on the first couple word list exercises. You want them practicing about 4, 5, 6, 7 times in order to reach that goal. They need to do repeated reading to become automatic with decoding that pattern. Okay, it's about building automaticity, right? So it's decoding practice. There's a little phonics instruction, and it's building automaticity through that phonics instruction and decoding practice. So you want them to do that repeatedly during that practice step. And that'll make a little more sense if you're totally new to it in a minute when I go through those steps. Okay, so then you click save and close, and now I can see that I've got my student in the right section. In order for me to get all my students back, I just click on that, the 3 bars, and click reset, and now all of my students return. Okay, you can also organize, sort. So if I click on one of the headers, for example, this is the Word Warm-Ups Access header. Now I can see it brought all my students who do not have access up first, and here are all the students who do have access. So that way, if I wanted, I could give all these students access at one time by selecting all of them and clicking Add Word Warm-Ups Live Access. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to navigate over to the student module, and instead of logging in as a teacher, I'm going to log in as a student, not with capitals. It's like I'm yelling, student. We'll log in, and this particular student has access to all 4 of the programs within Read Live, which is why there are 4 buttons here. If I didn't give her access to Spanish, there wouldn't be a button here, but see, she has access to Word Warm-Ups Live, so we'll go there. So now a student has already gone through these exercises, SH, CH, TH, WH, and NG. I'm going to have the student walk through the review exercise so you can see what it looks like. It's a little bit shorter on audio lessons, so it's a little quicker for a demo. So let me demo that review. Just know that there is a little bit less audio instruction in this one because they've just received it in the previous 5 lessons.
It's time to review.
Click the word under the picture for a lesson.
You can see we're on Look, Listen, and Respond step.
You've learned a lot. Put your learning to work as you read the words in this exercise. Look at the words. The words follow a pattern. Each word begins or ends with a consonant digraph. Together, the 2 consonants say one sound.
Click each button. Quietly sound out and then read the word with the audio.
Sh, I, p, ship. Ch, e, k, check. Th, a, thumb. W, I, p, whip. R, I, ng, ring.
Click a word again or click Next to continue.
So that is the Look, Listen, and Respond step. So now we go into the word list step.
Click any words you don't know and read them with the audio. When you're ready, click Start Timing, read down the columns, and click Finished. Then read across the rows and click Finished again.
Now, as the student reads down the columns, she can click on any word that she's unsure of.
Shod.
We don't automatically read the word for the students because we want them to practice decoding on their own. But if they're unsure, they can click and get that support.
Thud.
So after she reads down all 5 of these columns, she'll get to the final word. And when she reads it and clicks Finished, now it will highlight blue going across. So now she needs to read going the other direction. She can click on new words.
Fang.
She can click on words she already clicked on.
Shod.
And get support. Okay, and you want her here for multiple practices. I'm going to reach my goal on the first one, though.
You've reached your goal. You've finished all your practices. Click Start Timing to practice again, or click Next to continue.
So normally students will have to practice at least 3 times and reach their goal. So they may end up here for 4, 5, 6 practices. And then once they've met that goal, they'll go on to the spelling.
Click the speaker icon to hear a spelling word. Then type the word and click Show Me to see the correct spelling.
Shack. The roof was missing from the old shack.
Compare your word to the correct answer. Fix your word if it doesn't match. Then click Check.
So I spelled it correctly. I am now checking it against the answer, and I can see I got it correct. So when I click Check, I'll get a gold star.
Latch. He forgot to latch the gate, so the dog got out. Latch.
So I can tell I didn't spell it correctly, so I will fix it. But because I didn't spell correctly on my own, I will get a green check now instead of a gold star.
Thin. The ice is too thin for skating. Wham. When the boulder fell, we heard a loud wham. Tang.
Last one.
I can taste a tang of lemon in that cake. Tang.
Play this game while you wait for your teacher. Click the best answer to score points. If there's a speaker icon, click it. Click any word or picture you don't know to hear what it is.
So if you notice now, instead of the bar on the top and bottom being green, it's now red. Think of that as a stop sign for you. If you've used Read Naturally Live in the past, you know what to do here, right? That red bar at the top and bottom means the teacher's needed. But instead of playing a vocabulary game like they do in Read Naturally Live, they play a phonics
Click
game.
Next to try another question.
There's matching beginning sounds. They have to match ending sounds. They have to match vowel sounds and rhyming, those kinds of things. Okay, so if they get it right, they earn points. If they get it wrong, they have points taken away, and they can play this until the teacher comes and clicks Conduct Past Activities, enters her teacher login, and now listens to the student read the word list for the final time, right? Now, when you're reading a word list, the students need to read it accurately, so they can only have 3 or fewer errors and still pass a word list. And they need to meet their word list goal. In this case, I think the student says 50, so she has to read 50 words correct per minute with 3 or fewer errors. We don't have an expression rating when we're reading a word list, so there's really just 2 requirements for the word list requirement when working in the program.
Wait for your teacher to enter the number missed. Then click Next to continue.
You can see we enter the number of errors, get to see the graph. We have all sorts of information down here, including which words were clicked on to need to be read, how she misspelled the words that were misspelled, which helps you identify a confusion. Oftentimes students might think that a letter combination makes a sound that it doesn't, so that will help you identify that. We have graphs for the word list as well as for the spelling. And now you would typically have the student go back and fix that misspelling word.
Click the speaker icon to hear a spelling word.
And if she gets it right,
He forgot to latch the gate.
Compare your word to the correct answer. Fix your word if it doesn't match. Congratulations, you passed this exercise. Click Done to finish.
Please select the next exercise.
so then she'd go through a story exercise. Okay, and I'll walk you through those steps, but instead I'll do it in the PowerPoint. So during the introduction, she gets some overview lessons, practice decoding with some audio. Then she does that word list exercise. We just did that together. The story exercise, students will do a read along with the audio support. They practice reading the story. They then have some quick fill in the blank questions. They'll play that fantastic game. The teacher will listen to the student read the story. There isn't a specific goal. It's just, did she meet your expectations or not? Did she read accurately and with a little bit of expression and at a decent rate? It isn't a specific rate. There isn't a specific number. We just want to know, did they exceed, meet, or not meet expectations? Then again, you can have students go back and fix anything they struggled with and then earn their medals for doing the story exercise. Now, Word Warm-Ups Live meets a lot of different students' needs. So it can be a tier 1 independent practice type activity. You know, maybe 10 minutes, all of your kids log into Word Warm-Ups Live and they work on some skills. For tier 2 and tier 3, you're looking at more like a 20-minute intervention, maybe 30 minutes. Special education, it can be a targeted intervention with real specific phonics skills. As you saw, working on encoding and decoding. A lot of people use both Read Naturally Live and Word Warm-Ups Live. And so what do you do when you have both programs? Well, you have a couple options, and it depends on how much time you have. So sometimes people will set the first 10 minutes of their class time, the kids will log in and work in Word Warm-Ups. Right, so maybe you set a little timer. When the 10 minutes is up, the timer goes off, everybody logs out of Word Warm-Ups and they go into Read Naturally Live. So you can split the time each day. And that works well if you have more than the half hour. So 35 minutes or more, that is probably a good way to go. But if you have 30 minutes or less, I recommend passing a story and Read Naturally Live and then switching to Word Warm-Ups Live and do an exercise. Pass one exercise in Word Warm-Ups Live and then switch back to do a story and Read Naturally Live. So switch at the point of passing. It tends to be better if you have shorter periods of time. As you saw, there were some reports that you saw as the student was passing, but just like in Read Naturally Live, there are reports you can generate from the staff module. So you can log in and from the home page, go to that reports tile. And just like Word Warm-Up or Read Naturally Live, there is a Word Warm-Ups Live report section. We have a student level reports, student section reports, and exercise details. So here's the level report. It gives you detailed information on each of the exercises, gives you information on words correct per minute, as well as errors on the word lists they've done, as well as the spelling. And then you also have a exercise details report that is available as well. From the teacher menu within the student module, from there you can print the exercises and awards. You can take a look and review how they've been doing. You can make changes to their level. You can make changes to the steps and the way they have to do that, or reset an exercise. If they need to redo it for some reason, you can reset them and have them go through it again. So that sums up the brief overview of Word Warm-Ups Live. As I mentioned, we have some videos that go into greater depth regarding assessment. We have some webinars that do that as well. We have a lot of resources on our website, including short videos that show just about everything there is to do within Read Live, as well as written instructions. So please go to that help page to get those resources. Now, we are at the end of our presentation, and I wanted to check and see if there were any questions before we wrapped up today.
There was somebody was asking if you could go over when a student would use Word Warm-Ups Live instead of Read Naturally Live Phonics series. If you could go over that one more time.
Yes, absolutely. That is something I get that question a lot. So the best way to think of it is, in my opinion, is that you want to meet each student where they are on the different parts of reading. And so a student might be at a fluency and comprehension place that is slightly different than their earliest phonics need. So when you have a young student, they tend to have their fluency needs and phonics needs be closer together. So that Read Naturally Live Phonics series works with most young kids, first graders, second graders, early third graders, because they read at a first or second grade level, and that's where those phonics skills are taught. Then they don't need word warm-ups because they're working in Read Naturally Live Phonics series. They're getting phonics and spelling and fluency and comprehension. Okay, but as students get older, the difference between their fluency and their phonics separates. So then it's better to put them in as hard a level as they can handle and Read Naturally Live, and fill those phonics holes with Word Warm-Ups Live. So oftentimes students, once they get to mid-third grade level or above, many of those kids still have phonics issues, use Word Warm-Ups. So there's a lab, if your reading lab works with students from 2nd to 6th grade, likely most of your second graders are going to end up in the phonics series of Read Naturally Live. But most of your 5th, 6th graders, and even probably most of your 4th graders may end up working in Word Warm-Ups Live because the Read Naturally Live level is too high for them to have a phonics option. Okay, so I hope that helps. I don't see that we have any other questions that have come through, so I just want to thank you all for being here. You know where to find us, so please reach out when you have questions or concerns, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.